Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is your host, Andrea Epting, and you are listening to an episode on the Direct Impact podcast. Thanks for being with us today. We've got Boyd Allen back.
Hello,
Hey,
hello.
Boyd.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, Boyd is a CSAT, certified sex addictions therapist, and he is helping us today to talk about a really complex topic, which is really sex addiction and compulsivity versus cheating. And so, like, the
Mm,
name of the episode is Understanding Sex Addiction versus Cheating. It's a
yeah,
clinical look. So,
yeah,
unpack that. Help me unpack that, Boyd.
sure. So, I mean, it's a great question because I get, I mean, as you mentioned, I'm a CSAT. I get a lot of sexually compulsive clients that, or let me put it this way, a lot of clients who come in because they have either been told or they believe that they are sexually compulsive. And I get, it runs the gamut, right? Some of them are once you talk to them very clearly sexually compulsive and sexually addicted and sort of in denial about it. And so they say things like, "Oh, it's just normal, right? It's hard to stay faithful, and as long as it's not hurting anybody, whatever, I'll do this or that." Very clearly in denial. And then I've got
Uh-huh.
other guys, and this may be a function of my practice. So I'm in Springfield, Missouri. It's sort of the buckle of the Bible Belt. So we got a lot of sort of very conservative Christian types around here, which is awesome. But I also will get a lot of guys who come in and they'll, I'll give them some assessments to talk about the extent of their sexual acting out. And in an objective sense, it's kind of pretty mild, but they feel overwhelming shame, right? Oh, I walked through the mall and I saw an attractive person and I took an extra look, and so I'm cheating on my wife, right? So it's sort of hyper scrupulous or hyper religiosity kind of thing. And so it's a great question. How do you determine whether or not something is actual cheating, whether this is or sort of infidelity or serial infidelity versus an actual chemical addiction kind of thing?
Hmm.
Um, here's, I mean, there are assessments. ITAP, the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction Professionals, they have some instruments that are available to us as CSATs that are really, really, really thorough.
Hmm.
That are great. They're a little bit expensive sometimes, but they're awesome. I love giving them any chance I get. Um, and they're very thorough. They look into not only what the person's behaviors are, but what are their motivations and what
And,
behaviors hold a
and
lot
and
of
how much preoccupation is going
yes, I was
into
going to
it.
say
Yeah.
how much power, sort of psychological horsepower, is getting dedicated to this.
Yeah.
So I mean, to anybody who have those questions like, "Am I a sex addict? Am I just cheating or whatever?" There are clinical instruments that are normed on hundreds of thousands of in the population, and they're very reliable instruments, and they're great. Um, a lot of clients we don't even get to that point where they want to just talk about things, and we do a lot of trauma work, but the Cliff Notes version, I would say, is this: are you using the behaviors to regulate your emotions? Either if are you anxious and using the behaviors sort of compulsively, repetitively to cope with that anxious, overwhelm? Are you, on the other hand, underactivated? Are you depressed and you are trying to medicate that away, right? With sexual behaviors or other sorts of behaviors? And I tell everybody, all my clients, we're all addicts, right? We all are instinctively wired to sort of find ways to regulate our emotions.
Hmm.
And that's what it means to be human, right? I guess all humans are addicts in that regard. The question is, how dysfunctional, how disruptive, how damaging is this to your life?
Hmm.
Is it wreaking havoc in your marriage? Is your partner ready to leave you? Have you gotten caught at work doing these things? Has it, ruined your familial relationships because your mistress showed up at a work event, or, like,
Hmm.
how much damage is it doing? And I mean, maybe that's a cop out, but let's be honest, everything in the DSM-5, they all have the caveat at the end of like, does this cause the patient clinical distress?
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I've actually had people come in, Andrea, and their partner or their spouse or their family member has told them they have to come see me, right? I got to go get some help. You're a sex addict.
Hmm.
And they come in and I do an intake and we talk through it. And this person is very clearly in denial about it, right?
Hmm.
It's ruining their life, it's wrecking their life, but they're, the whole readiness for change scale, they're not anywhere near ready to step into this.
That's right.
And I've actually, I guess, fired clients or told clients like,
Well, they're not ready.
I,
It, it's
exactly,
it's just come back when you're
yes,
ready. Come back when you've
exact,
had more consequences that
100%.
really, yeah. Hmm.
100%. So, and I would say that is, I think, a good indicator for, is this addiction or is this cheating?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Another thing is, like, how willing are we, in the addiction? How willing is the person to violate their own moral code?
That's right.
Right? In other words, I got some clients that are, polyamorous, ethically non-monogamous, that sort of thing. And I mean, I certainly have my own opinions and my own, moral compass about what is okay for me. But my job as a therapist is not to, be the genital police about what people do with their bodies. My job is to say, hey, let's sort of hold up a mirror and say, is
Hmm.
what you say that you do, what
Hmm.
you say you believe about these things, what you actually do, right? In other words, is
Hmm.
there this split? So the split between what we say we do and what we believe, about this thing is a really good indicator of whether or not there's some addiction at play.
Hmm. So
Because
you
addicts are the ones that regularly violate their own moral code.
That's right. Right. And you keep coming back to consequences, consequences,
Yes,
consequences, which is like the first step, right?
one hundred
Powerlessness and
percent.
unmanageability. And now I have
Yes,
consequences as the result of my powerlessness.
one
And
hundred percent.
so my definition for addiction is it's a pathological relationship, which is that whole it
Yes.
regulates my mood, right? I'm
Hmm.
codependent on it, right?
Yep. I
And
love
so
it.
it's a
We talked about that in the
pathological
last episode.
relationship, yeah, to a mood
Yeah.
altering behavior that has life
Yes.
damaging consequences.
Yes.
And so you and I can sit across from somebody and very quickly realize what stage of change are they in? Are they ready to do this
Hmm.
work? Are they honest,
Absolutely.
open, and willing enough to address their disease?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
also we can tell, is this a one-off?
Hmm.
Or is
It's just
this,
a pattern.
I mean, because oftentimes by the time somebody is injuring a partner and acting out outside of a relationship, there's sexual compulsivity that's been going on for decades before that occurs.
100%. Yes.
Right.
100%.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah. And I tell people, I mean, and I think we touched on this in the last episode too when I visited, but the idea of comorbidity in addiction. Um, People, it's back to school time this time of year. Everyone talks about the freshman 15, somebody putting on 15 pounds when they start their freshman year. There's also like the sex addiction recovery, 15, where, so that's a good indicator, right? You mentioned about being codependent with this pathological relationship with this process or something. I mean, there can be addiction at play there that may have been playing
Dormant.
itself out in another arena, and then you got that under control. It switched over this. I mean, I tell people all the time early in my recovery, the porn addiction was about to ruin my marriage, and I got that under control, and then it switched over to, you wouldn't know it by looking at me now, but exercise. Right, I ran a whole bunch of half marathons and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And about 2 or 3 years into that, I was like, oh, this feels familiar. This feels addicty, right?
Hmm.
It's a path. It was taking time away from my family. So then I switched over, went back to grad school, became a sort of workaholic, right? And that was my anxiety and depression coping mechanism. And then somewhere in grad school, it was, towards the end of that, I was staying up late writing papers, turned into a food addiction. So there's
Hmm.
this transfer of addictions, and as long as, what I tell people all the time, as long as we're transferring from one big, hairy, damaging addiction to a smaller one, less damaging, less impactful, less negative consequences, right?
Hmm.
That's all we can really hope for in
That's the
recovery,
goal. Yeah,
right?
because
Yeah.
especially when it's like an outer circle behavior, which are the positive things that turn
Yes.
into an addiction. Addiction's like, yeah, I guess
Yep.
that's kind of the goal in early recovery,
Uh-huh.
right?
100%. Let's just transfer you over to a less damaging addiction
Right.
for
Right.
temporary. So, I mean, isn't that the whole thing about a recovery, right? It's a process, not a destination. It's the
Right.
it's the journey. And so I never worry about people, like, if they're transferring from one really damaging addiction to a smaller one,
Hmm.
I'm like, yes, awesome. And
Hmm.
right? It's always the yes and. It's not the, oh, we've completed it, but yes and. That's
Hmm.
awesome. Let's move towards recovery. And so, I mean, the whole question of this episode, right? Difference between sexual addiction and cheating. You want to get into some really interesting conversations. Do you have any addicts that you work with where they have a another sex addict for a partner?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's really sticky, right? If they've acted out together and with each
Hmm.
other's knowledge and with each other's blessing, is it cheating? Is it not? And it all comes back to what you said earlier, consequences.
Hmm.
Is it, are you guys getting out of your relationship what you want? Is this
Hmm.
working well for you? Is it
Hmm.
wrecking your life? Is it wrecking your relationship? Because if so, and you keep doing it, we're probably moving into the addictive side of
Yeah. And
things.
I would say more commonly, so yes, I do have co-addicts. Either,
Yeah.
one is chemically addicted and the other behaviorally, or both of them
Hmm.
sexually compulsive. But oftentimes, the conversation comes up around pornography specifically, where I thought we were
Yes.
using pornography to enhance our sex life. And then you find
Hmm.
out that the other partner is using it in secret. And then,
Yep.
working
Yes.
through that. So
Yes.
that happens quite a lot. And you mentioned it earlier, I have that conversation, or it comes up quite a bit of, I notice myself looking at other people. This is usually a
Hmm.
conversation for somebody who's in recovery and they still notice
100%.
themselves, and they
Yes.
they wonder, is it my disease or is it my
Yeah.
manhood?
Right.
And
Yes.
so that conversation does come up a lot. And as a woman,
Hmm.
CSAT, my response is, it is very human to notice beauty.
Yes.
It is very
Hmm.
human to, like, I gravitate towards art. I
Hmm.
gravitate towards beautiful bodies. I gravitate toward, I mean, like,
Yes.
and so, but are you then cataloging that so you can go home and masturbate over that? Or
Yes.
are you going
But
home and trying to find this person online so you can connect with them? Like, that's when you
yes.
are in a dis-ease
Yes.
of addiction.
Correct. 100%. That the objectification, the rumination,
Hmm.
the compulsive nature of that. Like I have to do this
Hmm.
now because I saw that or because I had this thought. You're
Right.
pretty strong and pretty strongly moving into addiction territory at that point. So
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Well, Boyd, again, I love talking to you. You're so much fun. You're so down to
Oh,
earth. I am so grateful that you are in this field,
well, thanks.
doing the work that you're doing because you're meant to do it. And it's just been nice reconnecting with you. And
Absolutely.
I will talk to you soon. Okay,
Thank you.
audience, if you want to hear more from Boyd, if you want to, ask some additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Go to the website, www.lightninginabottle.biz, and ask some questions. And thanks again, Boyd.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Thanks, Andrea.